Good morning, everyone. This is on the second day of our conference, which is we are in the adjusting the research lens. Before I move to the speakers, I would like to mention a little bit about the adjusting the research lens. Okay, building forward better small-scale fisheries rely on how best we are able to only adjust multiple lenses to understand and respond to the challenges and opportunities within and beyond small-scale fishery sectors. Multidimensional, complex, and unpredictable problem within small-scale fishery require dynamic and diverse tools, approaches, and knowledge as opposed to a static set of lenses. We focus on adjusting the research lens as crucial to facilitate creation of new knowledge and appropriate use of existing knowledges to generate novel concepts, methodologies, and understanding useful to respond to the complex and uncertain challenges facing small-scale fishery socio-ecological system. Research enables us to analyze problems, develop diverse understandings, and design adaptive response strategies through either strengthening existing mechanisms and methods or helping to craft new ones. In a transdisciplinary sense, research empowers us to ask different unorthodox questions, the answer to which impact the futures of humanities and position our pursuit of knowledge between, across and beyond disciplines and ways of knowing and doing. Our Congress has already identified justice, gender, food governance, financials, and research as the key lenses. The criticalities of the research lens is evidenced by the fact that it addresses the theoreticals and the methodologicals required to adjust all other lenses. Inversely, work on the research lens is also driven by the strength which those other lenses imbibe. Two principles guide the overall goal of this theme. First, research lens is integral to all other lenses, and the overlapping connections among them is crucial for how small-scale fisheries can be sustainable, resilient, and viable. Second, the research lens is question in transdisciplinary in nature. Therefore, it embodies the spirit of knowledge, theory, practice, action, advocacy, all in one place, and shun the strict disciplinary boundaries, not to reject them, but to create novel and hybrid space for everyone to engage. This theme will address a number of following questions regarding adjust lens. For instance, what is the research lens and how it is significant within the current state of small-scale fisheries? Second, how best can the research lens be characterized? What are its key elements? Third, are the existing research lens and approaches sufficient to address the multiple challenges facing small-scale fishery? Fourth, is there a need for reworking and adjusting the existing research approaches and lenses? Fifth, what are some of the key directions in which work on research lens need to proceed, especially within the Asia-Pacific region small-scale fisheries? And the final one, how is adjusting research lens connected to similar adjustment in a set of other lenses identified for the Congress? So I think this is now the overall, the adjusting the research lens that we are going to working together over the next 2 hours. I would like to address 3 world speakers in our group. First, actually, it will be started by Professor Chuenpagdee, the director of the TBTI. The second person will be Dr. Direk from the Dry Fish Matters, another global project. And the third one is about the V2V project. So we continue one by one. And now I would like to invite Dr. Ratana to give her talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. It's a great pleasure to be invited to give a talk. I usually don't do this in the Congress that I host, but I actually feel like it may be time. For those of you who know us, TBTI, or the Too Big to Ignore partnership, this is the 10 years anniversary for us. So it's really important that we reflect on what we have done and share what we have gone through in our process. I wanted to spend 10 minutes talking about this in terms of 3 points. First is about the research design, and the second point would be about the research approach, and then I wanted to talk about the research dissemination of the research. Okay, so the research design and all these are in the spirit of the transdisciplinarity that Dr. Suvaluck just mentioned. When we started the idea about we need to have a research network on small-scale fisheries, it came from the Congress that we attended in Bangkok. It was in 2008. It was a Congress that put people together, advocacy group, civil society organizations. It was the first time that organizations, civil society organizations and governments, actually it was hosted by the government of Thailand with FAO hosting, co-hosting. But it's civil society organizations that were really asking governments to make space for small-scale fisheries in the discussion about fisheries at the United Nations and the world global level. At that time, researchers, many of us were doing research in small-scale fisheries, but we never really came together to talk about it. So we then felt that it might be good to start connecting with each other and building the network. So that really gave rise to the first World Small-Scale Fisheries Congress in 2010 that we organized in Bangkok. So we said, if we were to put a Congress like this together, what would we achieve? Many of you might be familiar with the World Fisheries Congress, and this is the big Congress focused mainly on large-scale industrial fisheries, especially in the north. So you see 300-400 people, and now even 1,000 people getting together. The last year they had one virtually in Australia and Adelaide. So they have been running it every 4 years, the World Fisheries Congress. So we said, can we then organize also a World Congress, but focused on small-scale fisheries? And that's what we did. We said, going to be every 4 years. So that the Summer Olympic year, we are the Winter Olympic year, right? So that's kind of how we play with it. So 2010 we started, and that was the first Congress in Bangkok. In that Congress, we started to say, but now that we are bringing the researchers and active organizations interested in small-scale fisheries together, can we then formalize our network so that we can collaborate and enhance each other's knowledge and also the knowledge about small-scale fisheries? So we then put together this proposal and submitted that to the Canadian Funding Council. It's called Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. For the first time, the so-called funding bodies called SHRP, put this partnership grant to get a partnership program. Before we fund research, a small amount of funding to go to a small project. For the first time, they wanted to do a partnership research. It is important. One of the most important elements is to build partnership. So we then put together partnership between university researchers, research institutions, some government bodies, and also community organizations, groups that work in support of small-scale fisheries. So we then submitted this proposal, and it was during the first round of funding, we received the money. And you can imagine how surprised and delighted we were, because it's not small amount. Usually research in small scale fisheries, it's small amount of money in a small place. This time it's $2.5 million Canadian, and you can do the research globally, and you get 6-7 years to do it. So we use that funding together with matching contribution from all the research team. So it's basically $5-7 million project, and even more, because the project, we got funding for 6 years. We have been running for 10 years. So we continue to get funding, we continue to get support, but the majority of the work and the contribution actually has been coming from the researchers. So which means you have contributed the knowledge, the research, and then you put it through, the TBTI channel in terms of production, dissemination, etc. So the design of the research started basically initiated, right? I mean, it was like inspired by what we saw at the time as a gap, and there's a need. So we then got together, but then we said, we had this idea about the TD, the transdisciplinarity. We didn't really know what we were talking about. So we were like, well, at the very minimum, we need to consult broadly about, if we're going to put a research network together on small scale fisheries, what should we focus on? So we conducted regional consultation. We started from Bangkok, and then we went to many places in Latin America as well. We ended up in Cape Town and had another engagement. And at that Cape Town regional workshop, we came up with big 5 questions that we wanted to focus on. And they have to be 5, right? Because this is Africa. So big 5 questions, like big 5 animals of Africa, right? So we have to make sure that we focus on viability, how to make sure that small scale fisheries are viable, how to make sure that we look at food and livelihoods, the well-being, how to, and really look at, we have to look at securing the space for small scale fisheries. We have to look at improving information and the ecosystem, because they're part of that stewardship. We also need to look at governance. So those are the 5 themes that we came up with. And we then organized the research, designing our research around that. So again, those 5 themes came through this consultative process. But then in 2014, we started in 2012. In 2014, we got together for the 2nd World Small Scale Fisheries Congress in Merida in Mexico. And there was a come together of the network. So we went through this process again of reflecting on what we have done. It's kind of like, the midterm. We need to think about, do we need to change our direction and the way forward? So we went through a big round of consultation again. And this time, a lot of stakeholders, fishing people themselves were there, and they were providing input. If you want to really make a difference in the world of small scale fisheries, for the small scale fishing people of the world and the communities, we need to look at some of these topics. So from the 5 big questions, we started to spell it out, and then we turned into 13 research clusters. So 13 clusters to address issues in addition to the 5 that we had. We now add gender, we add transboundary, we had inland fisheries. Some of people were saying, what about inland fisheries? All of them are small scale. How come we're not focusing on that? And then we had a cluster on the transdisciplinarity as well. So we said, let us focus on that too, right? So the design of the research was shifted at that time. And now we have cluster, and then we can focus on those different topics that require attention. And one of the topics is the small scale fisheries guidelines. It was adopted in 2014. And then we have now a cluster to do that. So the research in the 2nd topic is about the research approach. So many of us do what we call case study, thick description, really engaged research and active research, right? At the Mahidol Congress, we were asked, it was a major conversation about who are we? Are we just researchers, or we are activists, a research activist? So it was like, are we advocating? Are we playing advocacy role in our research? So some people were more comfortable being researchers, and some people said, no, but we are do action research. So we are already doing that advocacy work, and we wanted to be more engaged and really get into areas where researchers normally don't. And actually, it was Derek Johnson, who is the next speaker, who said, if we call ourselves too big to ignore, isn't that obvious enough that we're not just doing research, we actually are doing more than that. We're already stepping into that action-oriented research. We can be advocating. But we're not really doing that directly, because we are still a research network. And that's what we do best. We provide knowledge, we provide information, we facilitate exchange of learning, we create capacity, we build support, we strengthen organizations. And then we hope to connect with those organizations on the ground who are really connecting with fishing people and fishing communities. So some of us do more in that space, some of us do a little bit less, but together we actually are moving forward. We built very good information system that is one of the most comprehensive database about small-scale fisheries. We ask questions that people should know. What are the main characteristics of small-scale fisheries? We call them profile. Let's profile them so that the world, wherever you are in the world, you will be able to see what small-scale fisheries look like. So we have achieved in elevating the profile of small-scale fisheries, making them more visible. And now, through our third aspect, which is about dissemination of knowledge and also mobilizing of knowledge, we have been building that capacity. We have been working to, we developed training model that is focusing on TD. We call it TD training model. It's online. The information system is also online open access. TD program is also online open access. Basically, you can self-learn, or you actually can do the course whenever we open it. So we build that capacity, but we also share information and knowledge through various means, including, for instance, we publish books. This is like big fat books in expensive books, right? I don't know, nobody should buy, but basically we publish them because they, as researchers, we do that, right? We write papers and write books. So we have many volumes of books, this Mara series publication by Springer. But we also have what we call ebooks. Now we have started the global TBTI Global Series ebook, and this one is free. It's, basically it's downloaded from the website. And the Life Above Water book was the first one, and you would hear more about our, there are many other books now that we have done. So we are doing what we can in terms of putting, doing good research design that is engaged, that is co-production, in terms co-designing, in terms of the thinking about the problems and what needs attention. And then we move into doing the research itself that is still part of that co-production of the knowledge. And then we are into this dissemination and co-building of that capacity. And again, building that even bigger network. So my final point is about 10 years of our work, and now we are trying to create TBTI hubs around the world. And the reason is simple, right? We need to build, in addition to the global or the regional connection, we also need to strengthen the in-country capacity and also network of researchers, government organizations, fishers organization, marketing cooperatives, all the key actors, right? So to build TBTI hub around the world has been our aim. And I cannot be more pleased that we are here in Japan because TBTI Japan is the first TBTI global hub. So I want to congratulate Yinji for the establishment of this TBTI Japan. We want you to join the initiative, and if you are interested in establishing, organizing TBTI hub in your country, definitely talk to us. Thank you very much.
I think, Derek, you can start.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether Suvaluck was going to do a transition. I'm happy to start. Okay, good morning, everybody in Japan. My name is Derek Johnson. I'm delighted to be here. And thank you, Prateep and Suvaluck, for inviting me to say a few words in the context of this Adjusting the Research Lens plenary session. The design of this session is really creative and also a lot of fun in that it brings Prateep, Ratana, and I together, all of us as project directors of this Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada partnership grant program. Okay, so each one of us have had one of these partnership grants. And I'd just like to say that we represent a kind of genealogy of the program on this panel, in the sense that all of this began, as Ratana said, in 2012 with the Too Big to Ignore project. And then my grant, or the grant that I'm leading, the Dried Fish Matters Partnership Grant, began in 2018. And then this was followed in succession by Prateep's Vulnerability to Viability project in 2020, I believe, Prateep. I use the word genealogy deliberately, as we each have been in all three grants. And speaking for Prateep, he and I were inspired and really, frankly, awed by how successfully Ratana ran TBTI. And, you know, what she just said sort of demonstrates the breadth of her vision. She really showed Prateep and I the pathway forward in terms of how to lead a large and complex grant of this type. So I'm really excited about this panel. I've been curious to see how our talks would come together, and especially to hear how our panel of discussants rise to the challenge of trying to make sense of our presentations. So there's really so much that I could say on the topic of adjusting the lens of research on small-scale fisheries. This inter and transdisciplinary field has evolved markedly since I first began to delve into it in the 1990s. In order to avoid the risk of casting the net too wide, though, in the short time that I have available, I'll stay focused on my experience leading the Dried Fish Matters project. Even that is too large a topic. So I'm going to narrow my scope further. I'm going to use the idea of craft as a way to reflect on some of the many lessons that I've learned through leading DFM. So let me start with the definition of craft. Loosely following the anthropologist Tim Ingold, craft is about processes of making or producing in which the object of production is seen as embodying the labor of the person who created it. So the thing takes on something of the person who made it, in other words. Craft is learned typically over a long period of time as an outcome of particular relations with teachers and with one's environment. I see craft as a set of skills that an individual can cultivate, but also as a way of thinking about processes of collective learning. It is possible to craft something as a group. So this interpretation of craft as collective work is what I want to think about in this presentation in relation to the promise of the SSHRC, or the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, partnership grants. So the full title of the DFM project, or the Dried Fish Matters project, is Dried Fish Matters, Mapping the Social Economy of Dried Fish for Enhanced Wellbeing and Nutrition. The project covers 6 countries in South and Southeast Asia and seeks for the first time to build a multi-scale spatial understanding of the organization and importance of dried fish in the region. The project includes more than 20 partner organizations and dozens of participants from Canada, the 6 Asian countries, and several other countries as well. The project seeks to scale up prior research by several of the project participants, including Ben Belton, Mustafa Hussain, and Shakuntala Tilsted. The originality of the project and its complexity as a collective undertaking make it, to my mind, a work of craft. There is no user's manual to implement DFM, and there is an imperative in the project to learn by doing, including to learn from making mistakes. Before I go further, I want to pause to acknowledge that I do not speak much about small-scale fisheries in this presentation. Although the DFM project is motivated strongly by an ethical commitment to small-scale producers and consumers across dried fish value chains. I will say just one provocative thing on this point. Small-scale fisheries researchers are passionate about small-scale fisheries because it is a craft occupation. It is a romantic counterpoint to commodity capitalism because of that craftness of it. Even more, small-scale fisheries are a striking other to the common desk-bound environments of most of us who study small-scale fisheries. As such, small-scale fisheries serve as fertile tools for our imaginations, but we have to be careful, however, not to let our imaginations run wild, okay? Okay, so back to the main focus here. One of the practical lessons that came to me from Ratana about the craft of leading a partnership grant is the importance of a good project manager. So Ratana has Vesna Kareji for TBTI and has been extremely well served by Vesna. In DFM, I've been extremely fortunate to have been able to work with Eric Thrift in this role. Eric is an intellectual peer who also happens to be a very astute project manager. In his project managerial work, Eric has put into words the unease that I feel about aspects of the institutional arrangements behind managing these partnership grants. In a word, that unease is about the colonial echoes that linger in partnership grants. So at the broadest level, there is at least an appearance of colonial style relations in the fact that a well-resourced global North country is providing funds to partners in the global South to conduct research. More specifically, colonial echoes are reinforced by the contracts-based process through which funds are transferred within the project. That process is onerous, it's bureaucratic, and it's based on a reporting model of payments for deliverables that is particularly difficult for community partners. I understand the need for accountability in the use of public funds. At the same time, however, the rigidity of the contract model risks instrumentalizing and rendering hierarchical the relationship between the Canadian lead partner and the partner organizations in the global South, despite the best of intentions that all of us share on this panel. In other words, it makes it harder to craft a project together, all right? So an anthropological approach to project management sounds like a contradiction in terms. Nonetheless, I'll briefly discuss 3 ways in which anthropology provides guidance for doing better project management. So first, let me return to the idea of craft. The Dried Fish Matters team is a group of researchers, practitioners, and students that individually and collectively embody a huge amount of experience in relevant areas of expertise. Yet, the focus and ambition of Dried Fish Matters is new to all of us. And we've been working together to design a collaborative platform for knowledge mobilization and action that has never existed, much like TBTI didn't exist before Ratana took it up, or V2V didn't exist before Prateep took it up. Our task is necessarily uncertain and risky, but it's also rich with possibility and excitement. Our work is a craft activity because we are taking skills and expertise honed over many years and trying to build something unique by using them. Okay, second, as intellectuals, members of the project bring a variety of analytical tools to the project, such as political ecology, social ecological systems thinking, value chain analysis, feminist commodity chain analysis, and more. These approaches have been useful, not just in terms of building our own tailor-made social economy approach in the project. They also provide useful ideas for reflexively assessing our own process of working together collectively. I can illustrate this very briefly with interactive governance theory, the interactive governance theory to which Ratana has made such significant contributions. The project itself can be seen readily as an exercise in governing, where discussions include how to ensure that the project addresses third-order principles, such as inclusion, through gender and regional representation. Another example is that early in the project, we collectively established a general research methodology, but gave the project's research teams responsibility for the day-to-day implementation of those methodologies. In interactive governance terms, this is the move from second order to first order governance. To my mind, this self-awareness and reflexive application of our guiding theoretical tools enhances our ability to engage well in intellectual craft work. Okay, third, I want to circle back to the ethically troubling colonial connotations of the partnership grant program in the international context. I'd like to suggest that the ethical orientation of anthropology and anthropological methods provide a way to engage with this concern, if not to solve it. Anthropology is fundamentally ethically committed to building relations of understanding. Sorry, I'm distracted. I've never done a Zoom keynote before, and somebody's sending a chat. It's wild. Okay, sorry. Let me get back on track. I would like to suggest that the ethical orientation of anthropology and anthropological methods provide a way to engage with this concern, if not to solve it. Anthropology is fundamentally ethically committed to building relations of understanding across social and cultural difference, on the premise that we are all human, and thus share a core ability to relate to each other. In practical terms within DFM, this has meant several deliberate strategies to counter the north-south institutional orientation of the project. The first and simplest of these has been to build regular meetings into the project schedule. A second effort has been to try to make decisions about research design collectively, but to allow the regional level research teams within DFM to manage their own research efforts as they best see fit. Third, we supported a master's student to study DFM's project process. She focused specifically on communications effectiveness in DFM and found that overall DFM has built good internal communications, but there are several specific ways that DFM could foster better internal and external information flow and mutual understanding. Fourth, as the DFM sessions at the World Small Scale Fisheries Congress will demonstrate, we have tried to foster the co-construction of knowledge as fully as possible. I have the sense, as the project has matured, that we are getting closer to a shared ideal of together crafting an understanding of the social economy of dried fish in South and Southeast Asia. I've considered it an immense privilege to be able to participate in large-scale collaborative research projects over the course of my career. Projects like those in the Shark Partnerships Grants Program are always imperfect human endeavors with the risks, mistakes, but also tremendous joys that human collaborations can promise. And for an anthropologist, what better way to make a career than to spend time with and learn from colleagues in other parts of the world? Okay, so in conclusion, in this presentation, I've introduced the idea of craft as a way to think about large-scale collaborative research, I've argued that a key lesson from an anthropological understanding of collaborative research as craft is the importance of critical self-reflection on process. Careful attention to collaborative process is methodologically consistent with the long history of research on collective action in small-scale fisheries. It also suggests a more ethically robust pathway to collaborative research. Thank you.
Thank you, Suvaluck, for creating this opportunity, of course, but also to Derek and Ratana for leading the path. So of course, the Vulnerability to Viability project came third in the sequence, to TBTI and DFM, but there is a lot of connecting link in terms of the ideas and philosophies, and then the actions that both Ratana and Derek were talking about. So it's a nice kind of connection that brings me to provide the third talk today. My focus is going to be mostly the little experience that we have in the last 2 years with the V2V global partnership and the network itself, and the timing in which it actually started, and bring it to a point where I could say how it really connects to the adjusting research lens theme that we have gathered here to talk about. So the Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership today is a partnership of 121 scientists, practitioners, policy and community actors, and it is growing. 38 universities, 22 government and research institutions, 25 NGOs and civil society organizations. Currently, altogether, we have 65 graduate students and about 16 HQPs or highly qualified professionals, which includes research associates and postdocs together. It is based now in terms of where our people within V2V come from is 26 countries across 6 continents, and it's still growing. The moment I say these numbers, and I say this is growing, it really relates to the kind of research we have set out to do. And I'm going to come to that and speak a little bit about the focus and the goals of the project itself. But the moment there are so many people, of course, diverse in their perspectives, diverse in the way they believe in research philosophies, and this debate around, are we researchers, are we activists, are we advocates, or are we practitioners? These are all kind of inherent in the diversity of the people that that V2V constitutes of. And in itself, if you look at this diversity, it kind of directs us towards a dynamic research process whereby there is a constant churning in terms of including these ideas and everything that comes out of this particular group. So there is no running away from adjusting the research lens if research is one of the key activities of global networks like this. When we started the V2B global partnership, of course, it as already mentioned, it really connects well with some of the activities of TBTI, and then of course DFM came out, and then my and others' involvement in other global projects around community-based resource management and coastal communities and small-scale fisheries. We set out to kind of focus on a couple of things. The first core idea behind V2V was that yes, it is easy to talk about vulnerability. Of course, we read it, we see it, we witness it, and we try to respond to it in our day-to-day activities in the communities that we work. It's easy to talk about. It is easy to read and understand that, yes, there is vulnerabilities. There's unlimited amount of vulnerabilities in this world, especially in fishing communities. But do we stop there? If we don't stop there, then what is the next course of action? So the initial group that kind of started to reflect on this idea of V2V thought that there are inherent strengths in these communities that has kept them going. I mean, the basic idea is if these small-scale fisheries communities were only vulnerable, they would have perished by now. There is something, either visible, invisible, or both, that have kept them going until today. And can we understand those, inherent strengths, as we would like to call them, and therefore take a new positive look at vulnerabilities, and therefore say, how can we move to the other end, which could be the viability? So not to look at vulnerability and viability as disconnected, concepts or terms, but to say, okay, if there is vulnerability, there must be a pathway towards viability. And so we said, okay, this is the transition from vulnerability to viability, and how can we make this transition possible in the real world, which is the small-scale fisheries world. There are a couple of things we thought that would help us in terms of doing this or achieving this, along within collaboration with small-scale fisheries communities. The first one is the knowledge that is required to achieve this transition. Of course, the knowledge needs to be co-produced, needs to be co-created. It should not be coming from one particular domain, which could be science or other kinds of domains, but it is a co-creation process. It is a co-production process. Therefore, how do you combine this process through a partnership kind of format to create the necessary knowledge? And that knowledge can help not only understand, but also to make the transition from vulnerability to viability possible. The second one is, what do we do with this knowledge? Who retains this knowledge? Where do we keep this knowledge? So we are talking about a repository, of course, connecting with already successfully done activities like the ISSF by TBTI, but also other global, databases around knowledge. So we are thinking of a repository that would hold this co-produced knowledge for common use and therefore provide a platform for further use and dissemination of this knowledge. Then the third element is to synthesize and integrate this knowledge in a way that is relevant to all of these domains, pertaining to small-scale fisheries. The policy domain, the science domain, the action, the advocacy, the practice domain, and multiple other kinds of needs in terms of that knowledge. So integration and synthesis is a key activity, research activity that we thought we would be doing as part of this partnership. To make use of this, but for what? For making the transition from vulnerability to viability possible in small-scale fisheries. And then the last two are building the right kind of capacity or capacity development at multiple levels, because without the required amount of capacity, and in literature this might be called empowerment, who gains the control and who really decides for whom, but the right kind of capacity will then enable these transition processes from vulnerability to viability. And then the fifth one is what do we do with the knowledge, along with, in collaboration with all other partners, how do we effectively mobilize and disseminate this knowledge again to facilitate the transition process. So if you look at the team that I mentioned, a very diverse, multidisciplinary team that have numerous ideas that would require constant, tweaking, constant adjusting of the research process. But if you look at the objectives that I just mentioned, from knowledge co-production to knowledge dissemination through integration and capacity development, this also kind of tells us that without a flexible process that allows for mending, that allows for making adjustments, the right kind of research cannot be done in order to support and facilitate transitions from vulnerability to viability in small-scale fisheries. We came at a time, our project was approved 1st of April, and we all, 2020, and we all know what happened in March 2020. On March 12, 2020, a global pandemic was declared. So we have been in the pandemic since our origin. So our ideas and the ideals of getting out in the real world, doing real in-person, real-time collaboration, building friendships in the communities across the world, and we are present in 6 countries in Africa and 6 countries in Asia. Kind of took a backseat. We, for some time, we were kind of playing with this idea of, okay, it's going to go away, and then we'll be getting out to the real world and do this partnership in a way that helps us to bring new insights into the vulnerability, viability transitions. But until now, we are just in the waiting game. But we didn't kind of stop there. The philosophy around, corrupting, as Derek was talking about, or to make it more pertinent to the topic of today, adjusting or readjusting or innovating or, being brave to do new things amidst, crisis, has pushed us to do new things actually in the last 2 years. I know time is running out, in the 1 or 2 minutes. I would try to bring it to a conclusion by saying, the crisis actually pushed us into a domain to ask the same questions in a new way. Of course, we started to look at, how to do community engaged, participatory, collaborative, place-based, and transdisciplinary research while we are isolated and we are disconnected and somewhat disillusioned because of the pressures from COVID. Forget about all other drivers and all other pressures from the policy domain, from the climate domain, from the other domains that were already existing and making life, difficult. But at the same time, because of these multiple, pressures, and which were kind of further triggered by the COVID pandemic scenarios, the very nature of vulnerability that we started to talk about in, at the application stage, and the very nature and understanding of viability and what does V2V might mean, all of those things suddenly had gone through a massive, change. So we had to kind of, re-engage with all of this understanding. So that was kind of, our approach in terms of adjusting. Just to bring to a conclusion, and I'm not going to go into details of this due to time constraints, but I will just mention some of this, maybe, another platform we could talk about this. What are the key elements of adjusting the research lens, especially relating to vulnerability to viability? I was kind of, I was listing, a number of things, from our experience in the B2B Global Partnership Project. I thought that what triggers adjusting as a crafting, tool, and again, linking to you, Derek, is people and fish. Of course, anything changes in people, community, and the fish in the small scale fisheries, triggers adjusting, triggers recrafting, triggers, innovating and re-engaging in research. Same thing applies to place, space, and the context. Again, I'm not going to go elaborate that because that's going to take a lot of time. Temporal dimensions. If COVID was there for only 3 months, what would have happened to our research? Instead, as it is continuing over 2 years now. So there is a temporal dimension that triggers the need for readjusting, the need for recrafting, research. Theory, concepts, and knowledge, triggers, the need for adjusting the research lens. Ways of knowing and doing, which of course, relates to methods and approaches, new ways of doing things is a constant, endeavor of all of these partnerships. And that triggers, the need for adjusting. The need for new capacity development, the need for resources, not only financial resources, but also other kinds of resources to run this kind of projects and therefore engage in meaningful research is a factor for looking at how to adjust and readjust and recraft and craft research. Of course, multiple drivers and influences, as I have already talked about, is another factor. And the last but not the least is the kinds of outcome and the results and the response strategies we try to get through these kind of initiatives to achieve the goal. In this particular case, the goal of really seeing some movement from the vulnerability to viability in small scale fisheries. All of these then tells us that small scale fisheries is a dynamic system as opposed to, of course, a static system. And understanding vulnerability to viability within this kind of a dynamic system is equally dynamic, highly dynamic. Therefore, it is a continuous process. Research lens, or any other lens, as we will see as part of this Congress, needs to address or respond to the ongoing changes in the small-scale fisheries the dynamic, character of small-scale fisheries. Because a static lens will be a gross mismatch to the kinds of goals that we want to achieve, not only through research but also through action, through advocacy, through practice, and through policy, and a combination of all of those things. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we have last experiences from the three speakers, Ratana, Dilek, and Prateep, who share their and reflect the significance of adjusting the research lens and offers a number of examples and how this has been addressed. So next we are going to move to the plenary roundtable that will be after this, which contain about 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, about 6 speakers on the row. So now, Prateep.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we move to the next agenda. Thank you. Thanks very much for the 3 major global partnership persons who really work hard for more than 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, this is a the roundtable is a continuation, to the 3 lead, talks by these 3 global partnerships itself. I know we have, overstayed, and took a bit of time from the roundtable itself. So we will try to readjust, the time format for that roundtable itself. Just to briefly say, this roundtable speakers, and I'll introduce all of them. And then the format is that I'm going to ask them a couple of questions following their reflection on the topic of adjusting research lens. And these roundtable speakers represent the 3 partnerships, and some of them overlap between, these 3 partnerships, so more than one partnership itself. So the speakers today, or the members of the roundtable, are Gazi Nurual Islam from the University Tun Abdul Razak from Malaysia. And the way we have set it up is that after the initial reflection, each one of them are going to focus on a particular topic that has already been assigned to them. So for Gazi, we have assigned the topic of adjusting the research lens for understanding and responding to COVID-like drivers in small-scale fisheries. Our second member on the panel is Sisir Pradhan. Gazi represents B2V, and Sisir represents DFM, but really strongly connected to B2B as well, from the University of Waterloo. And his topic would be adjusting the research lens for inclusive value chains in small-scale fisheries. Himli Ghani, who is from the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF Malaysia, is part of B2B Global Partnership. And his topic that he's going to address today is adjusting the research lens for sustainable and inclusive governance of exclusive zones and/or MPS. Jenia Mukherjee, who is from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. I'm not sure if Jenia was able to join us or not, because yesterday she was stuck in Munich airport. So Jenia, if you're there, feel free to jump in when I request you to talk. And Jenia's topic is adjusting the research lens to focus on the discursive issues in small-scale fisheries. And then the fifth member on the roundtable is Yinji Li from Tokai University, part of TBTI and B2B. And Yinji's topic is adjusting research lens for making research community oriented. And the 6th member on the roundtable is Kungwan Juntas Hot, and Kungman is from Kasestrat University in Thailand, part of course, TBTI, a strong member of TBTI, but also partners on the Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership. And Kungwan is going to talk about adjusting the research lens for pro small-scale fisheries policies. So I will start this first round by inviting our panel members in the same order that I introduced them, and to talk about, what does adjusting the research lens mean from your own perspective, and why it might be significant for building forward better small-scale fisheries. We had originally given you 4 minutes, but we are, adjusting all the time, in the spirit of this session. So if you can take less than 4 minutes, that would be wonderful, so that we can leave a little bit of time for question, answer, and discussion. So why don't you start with the first round of reflections, starting with Gazi.
Thank you, Prateep, for the wonderful opportunity to talk in the roundtable discussion. So the first question is related to why and what does it mean for readjusting the lens for the research, right? So I'll share my experience from the need for readjusting the research. Being a social scientist and working for the research over the years in my career, I experienced that the social science research is a very difficult research, and we do not achieve our goal in most of the research that I have done in the past. So this is the challenges that we are doing, but still we are looking forward to get more issues, more difficulties, more challenges to solve the issues and problems of the community, problems of the small scale fisheries, especially because it is a food related research. And this is I think, very important component of the society that we are doing the research for the poverty alleviation or poverty reduction or vulnerability reduction. These are the very fascinating area of my work from the very beginning of my career. So, and why we need the readjust, meaning that as a researcher, we always investigate the problems and investigate the problems to do some scientific knowledge generation or to contribute some new knowledge to the pursuit of knowledge on the particular domain. We investigate what are the concepts, ideas, and indicators that explain the problems from the particular community. So if we consider this understanding about the concepts, and these concepts and ideas and problems is dynamic, it changes, and particularly in the social economic area. Social and economic area, there are many disciplines across the anthropology, psychology, sociology, economics, political science, and also geography. So there are a lot of different disciplines for talking about the human dimensions of the vulnerability or governance dimension of vulnerabilities, whatever you like. So it is a combination of the problems that we are facing for the researchers, and we always adjust from the conventional concept to contested concept to verify whether this problem is really a problem or it is a like a for the time being or very short-term problem. So we always have a challenge to look at the problems in the consensus from the scientists, from the scholars, whether we are looking the problems is right or just is a symptom. It's not a real problem. Like COVID, we don't know what is the next phenomena and when will the next phenomenon will come. We don't know. There are a lot of risk and uncertainty and probability of managing these problems. So these are the need to adjust and to get more new areas and new concept to explore whether these concepts and ideas and problems are from the insights from the community or to sort out the problems. Also, yeah, the second part, can I get 1 minute for second part? why
if you can conclude in maybe have a minute.
So the poverty research, for SSF research, there is a wide range of and varied range of the indicators in the social science for doing this research, a social point of view, so ecological point of view, from the governance point of view, like a multi indicators to explain in the research. So there is a need to comprehensive understanding of the aspect of the problems, and scientists need to catch up all the changes that happening in the society to adjust and underplay with the problems and concepts to provide a good information or knowledge to the society, to contribute to the practitioners and contribute to the society as a whole.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks very much, Gazi, especially for the mention, that we need this readjustment of research lens, because we need to engage in the contested domains that are, always coming and confronting us. We move on to Sisir Kanta Pradhan for the opening reflections. Sisir, if we can keep it to less than 3 minutes or 4 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you for such wonderful presentations in the beginning. That sets us the tone, actually. I come from basically, I don't consider myself a thorough researcher. I come from a practicing background of 20 years of working in the field, and then coming to look at the issue in a different research and then what I am wondering on this question, when I got this question, how do I really understand this? So this actually gives me 2-3 kind of options. One is that when I talk about adjusting research lanes and what is research lanes, I try to understand first, and that I think it's a particular pathway to understand, to learn something and understand a particular issue, which is clearly motivated by some theoretical orientations. And these theoretical orientations are practical orientations. Like me, I worked in humanitarian and development context, and it is really shaped by the kind of experiences, exposure, and personal interest that I have, and looking at that issue from that perspective. And that brings me to another confusion. In fact, I can say, people often say that researchers are unbiased, neutral, and you have to connect with dots and everything. So then, in working in the humanitarian context, with saying neutral and neutrality are two different concepts. And here, I think neutrality is important. That gives us a kind of an opportunity to position ourselves. And how do we really position ourselves critically? So having said this, I really thought of 5 different aspects that needs to be really looked at when we are talking of adjusting research lanes. First one for me is important is co-production, which is understanding the whole issue with the people in their space. So when you are with the people in their space, your whole and designing the research with them, and the whole research objective and priority is little contextual and highly relevant in that sense. And second, I think everybody has said there is a transdisciplinarity pathways to understand issue in a holistic manner, which is actually talking of connections. So there are a lot of connections needs to be looked in this complex world. When we are looking at resources and its complexities, it is not either or, it's how we are really going to send a meaning out of multiple kind of ideas and knowledges that coming in. And the third important pillar, which I think is about the for whom and for what we are doing. That is very important for us. That's related to the first one, but it is basically positioning ourselves as researchers to looking at in the face of whole marginality happening across, like extreme marginalization happening in the small scale fisheries, and working in systems like market systems and all. We need to really look in where do we place ourselves and how do we really orient ourselves in approaching an issue or conceptual framework while taking up the research. And the fourth one is about it has to add to the existing knowledge, either by contributing or by challenging the existing knowledge and bringing kind of a ripples in the system so that various people take meaning out of it. The fifth one is temporal. The COVID has learned us, basically COVID was a very strong kind of a trigger that made us learn how temporal aspects are very critical. It's time. It's not about COVID. The small scale fisheries ever changing. Actually, the other sectors are changing faster than fishery sectors, and that has implications on small scale fisheries in a law where I work. International regulations are changing. So how do we really look at temporal factors to make ourselves relevant? So for me, addressing research lanes are these 5 pillars.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Sisir, for outlining those 5 key pillars of the need to adjust the research lanes. We now move on to Himli Ghani from Malaysia for your quick reflections, please.
Okay, thanks a lot, Prateep, and thank you for the opportunity. Okay, so yeah, from my perspective, I would like to talk about the lens first. What exactly the function of the lens? So yeah, from my understanding that a lens is a tool that helps us to see a clear picture of an observed object at a different distance. And if we were to look at the different object and at the different distance, we need to adjust the lens so it could provide us a better and clear picture. So that's the concept. And if I were to apply it to our topic today, yeah, adjusting the research lens, for me, it means that we need to adapt and change the way that we are doing our research now. So we need to look back at the previous research and also evaluate the extent how well the research contribute and also can be applied into the management. And does the research really fill in the gaps of small-scale fisheries, or is it the research that we are doing just for the sake of publication or maybe to meet the organizational KPI? So these are the things that need to look back. And from my perspective, the research goals must be to fill in the current gap and current challenges faced by the specific area, specific fishing community. So it have to adapt, respond, reflect, and see beyond the scope interdisciplinary, holistically, because we know that the small-scale fishery is very, very unpredictable, very complex and multidimensional. So let me give you all one example. Let's say there are the fishing committee complaining about that they are catching less fish compared to the previous year or previous decade. So we cannot do a straightforward thinking that, okay, we need to do a research that can improve the fishing gear, the catch ability of the fishing gear. So that's something that's not really what the situation is needed. Because the fishing gear, our fishing gear is already at its full potential and our fish stock is already pressured enough by our fishing gear. So don't improve the fishing gear anymore unless we want to reduce the impact towards the habitat. So that way I would agree. So maybe the research that we need to focus on maybe more on the biological, maybe do study on define the causes, how to improve the fish stock, and maybe do on the socioeconomic part, maybe do research by identifying what kind of alternative livelihood that available that might be helpful for the fishermen to increase their income. So that's all from me, Prateep. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Himli. For using adjusting the research lens to look at the past and also to look at the current changes and making innovations, as a way of that response. I'm almost sure that Jenia is not here. Jenia, if you give me a shout, if you are here. But I'm going to move on to Yinji Li. And Yinji, over to you for your initial reflections, please. Okay,
thank you, Prateep. I think I'm going to borrow the words from a book that we're going to publish. Well, we're going to have the book launch tonight. Well, the words are from Professor Lo from Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology. Well, yes, let me borrow these words. The words are says like this. Given the current trend of academics focusing on their own research, and this is writing rather than the translation of foreign books, for which, despite the efforts it takes, little reward is given. And he says that this translation is a distinctive work that we really see anymore. And I really think this is how we really need to adjust our research lens. We really need to make the research, the results, as well as the fisheries ongoing situations more accessible to the general public. And small-scale fisheries research, we can say, can't go without the transdisciplinary. Professor Ratana has mentioned this point in the morning, in the day one summary, and people on the spot. And we have this word in Japanese, we call it gemba, people on the spot, the bottom-up process. And we also had the catchphrase from yesterday, the ichidanketsu. And Ratana has also mentioned this in the morning. And I think you're going to hear this a couple of more times for the rest of this Congress from me, I think. Ichidanketsu, the togetherness. And yeah, so again, we really can build this forward better without these concepts and the way of thinking. So yeah, we'll need to make these results, the situations to more accessible to the general public. And this is why actually we are doing this. The TBTI and TBTI Japan are doing these, the global book series, ebook series. Yes, that's all from me. Thank you, Prateep.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much, Yinji. Yes, knowledge is power. Information is power. You need to make it accessible so that people know these stories about small-scale fisheries. And therefore, there is a support that builds up. And therefore interventions could be made. So I will move on to now Kumar for the opening reflections, please.
Thank you, Prateep. So from my perspective on the resource rate adjustment, I think from my experience, 40 years in Gazi University, I found that the development of fishing communities can be classified to 3 categories. The first one is underdeveloped fishing communities, I mean small-scale fishing communities. The second group is better off fishing communities. The last one is developed fishing community. In each group, the issue of each group is different. The first group is poverty is the main issue. The second one is a conflict among the fisher. The last one is the issue is sustainability. So to solve the problems, at the beginning, when I was young, I think that, okay, if we have a vicious circle, we can break vicious circle through funding or introduce some fishing gears that have a high fishing efficiency, and then improving marketing system, and also give us some education to the fishers, and we can break the vicious circle. But from my experience, I found that only that to implement this, we need a lot of knowledge, not only one dimension or 2 or 3 dimensions. So I think the research lens has to adjust according to the issues of the communities or of the whole country as a whole. And also, we also have to consider all the change of the world. Our world have changed rapidly in the last 10 years. Change in technology, change in climate, and also social behavior also change. So all this change, we need multi-lens to find out the fact and the scientific evidence in order to solve the issues of that one. When I work, I start to work with the Kasesat at the beginning of my life. I still stick to a discipline. I stick on fishery economics discipline. But after I work with Ratana from Ecofish, TBTI, FJM, V2V, then I have to change my lens on research, because I realized that if we want to improve the small-scale fisheries livelihood or well-being, we need a lot of knowledge from I think the transdisciplinary approach should be the answer to solve the problem. So that's why we need to change our research lens according to the change of ours, and also the change of the small-scale fishery communities. I think that's what I want to mention here.
Thanks very much, for highlighting that there is not only diversity, but each of these fishing communities could be very unique in their disposition and how they exist and the characteristics that they hold. And we need to understand and engage with each one of those as if they are really unique, and therefore adjusting the research lens. Thank you very much. After that initial reflection, I'm going to move on to the second round. Again, I'm requesting everyone to take less time than I had originally told. So the second round in the same order, we'll start with Gazi. And this round, you're going to focus or speak in relation to the topic that you have been assigned, okay? And if you could highlight the topic again for the benefit of our audience, that would be really great. So the second question is why it is important to adjust the research lens for the assigned topic, for your assigned topic, So please say the assigned topic and then say why it is important to adjust the research lens with regard to that topic in the context of small-scale fisheries. So over to you, Gazi.
Thank you very much, Prateep, once again. So this question is related to how to adjust the research lens based on the COVID-19 vulnerability or COVID-19 impact. So my understanding about the COVID, it has a very adverse impact on the multiple area in the socio-economic aspect. And these sources also very multiple channels. So sources of the vulnerability from multiple channels, from the economy to the economic trade, for example. And it has a disruptions on the supply chain from the food production sector. So these supply chain disruptions affect from the production to the distribution and to the international trade and revenue. of the economy. So it has a multiple range of the channels, and also for the affecting the economy and socio-economic and environmental conditions of the community. And then there is a source of vulnerability and risk that is unique in the COVID-19 we observed. It's unique because it has a vulnerability from the risk and also from the health and environmental point of view. So health related problems and also environmental related problems. And it affects the society in terms of economic. And when we look at the SSF community, the first shock they get from the economic. So because they have very limited source of income to support and to adapt the crisis. And there are other problem also to support from the community, but the most important support they get during the COVID is from the support from the different agency like government and non-government organization. So the adoption strategy for the future, which will be included in the research, which is challenging that finding the mechanism to adopt the strategy to find the solution to the adverse effect on the economy and the social characteristics of the community. So this is very important to find the appropriate policy instruments. So we may need to do some policy studies to understand what are the policy instruments could be helpful for adopting a strategy for the smaller scale fisheries for the livelihood improvement in the future.
Yeah. Okay, great. New challenges, new research, and new ways of doing things, needs to be attempted. Okay, moving on to Sisir. The same question, Sisir.
Yeah. Thanks, Prateep again. Value chain, looking at this whole, what needs to be changed in the value chain in terms of research lens. I will just touch upon a few points because of interest of the time. One, we all know that value chain involves multi-layered interactions across different nodes, and each node involves a set of actors. And that interactions really determine how this value chain is robust and governed, how to govern. And that single governing motivation is more of financial motivation in the chain. So every node, people want to maximize and optimize their financial return. So that's how the value chain operates. And that leaves the whole question of SSF and commodity. Looking at, I worked in a dried fish, and when dried fish looked at it from a commodity perspective, so we tend to ignore the whole social as well as the ecological life of that dried fish, which is very critical. That gives a lot more important feedbacks in terms of how these interactions shapes and how this behavior really operates in the value chain. We call it value chain conduct and value chain structure. So that's one question. The second question is about this revenue creation and optimization quest in a commodity chain, and that makes in marketing systems, now people are talking about marketing systems languages, SSF experience and adjusted integration, value integration structure. In that sense, that one chain player is becoming more important and powerful because of the access to capital and in the capital intensive systems. And that is creating unequal distribution of benefits as well as unequal access to decision making in a value chain process. And if we look at, and the third major thing, there has been rapid change in the systems coming from governance restrictions coming from your climate change. There's a habitat change is happening. So many rapid changes are happening in the value systems, value chain. So, and for that rapid change, generally the commodity chain, they go for a expanded bill of material structures and look for options for investment and then optimize the profit at the chain level. But however, when we really looked in DFM system in the from the people's perspective, from the dried fish processor perspective, it is highly disintegrated, small scale house, individual house-based enterprises, having less access to things. And that leads us to questions about to look at this whole value chain from a social and ecological system perspective. And that gives a very new way of looking at linkages, which is not actually linear, that's dynamic. The second is feedbacks, that is non-linear. The third is emergence, uncertainty, where market deals the risk, we deal with the uncertainty that gives opportunities for more more number of equilibrium in operating the systems. And then emergencies invite innovations. So there is a need to look at this whole dried fish or fishery departure from commodity value chain approach, look at it through a very different social ecological as well as human well-being approach to really make the value chain amenable for poor.
Yeah. Very good point about how conventional approaches might be missing out on key elements of the whole value chain. Therefore needs to be brought out, and therefore it is linked to readjustments. Moving on to Himli for the same question on why it is important to adjust the research lens with regard to your assigned topic.
Thanks a lot, Prateep. Okay, so first of all, I would like to describe the small-scale fishermen. The first thing is they are the most vulnerable group. They are very, very poor, and their income sometimes just could cover just enough to cover 2 meals per day. So yeah, in some MPS there are huge coastal communities, and they have been utilized the area for decades. So their right to exploit the resources must be taken into consideration, and it is our job to create the balance and to find a win-win situation where the well-being of the community and ecosystem is taken care of. So yeah, as been said before, that small-scale fisheries is very, very unpredictable, very complex, multidimensional. So a very thorough research and information digging is very important to formulate a sustainable and inclusive governance. Indeed the MPA and exclusivism is a management tool that could help us to restore the ecosystem, but without proper plan for the policy making, for the decision making, the negative impact towards the small scale fishermen is very, very huge. So for example, let's say that the input from the fishing community is very, very important for the fish manager to decide what kind of MPA that they want to create, whether it is fully protected or multi-use MPA. So the wrong decision making could lead to a chaos situation where the purpose of the MPA cannot serve its purpose anymore. So something like the fisheries profiling, empathy mapping, frame survey, transdisciplinary methodologies, visioning exercise, all of that are very, very vital to help us to see the actual issue and challenges in different dimensions, and also to make the stakeholders, the fishing committee, understand the objective and the purpose of the MPA that we are want to create. So we would only then we could come up with a comprehensive and inclusive governance that covers all the aspects like ecological, economical, and also the social aspect. Yeah, that's all for me, Prateep. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, new interventions in policy and management needs to be monitored and evaluated to find out what is happening. And thanks for highlighting that. So moving on to Yinji now for your quick response to the question.
I'll be quick. always. My assigned area is about adjusting the research lens for making research community oriented. And I'd like to think about it with two ways. One is about research community oriented. And the other way is making research community oriented, the fishing community oriented. So for the first one, again, we have this saying that alone you can do so little, but together we can do so much. And this is actually since the TBTI Japan launch in 2020, we've published. Including the new book, we all have two the publication. The first one is the TBTI Japan ebook. In this book, we have for about 28 contributors and 17 people contributed the short communication essays, including the fishers. And this one is published in English. We want to make Japanese small-scale fisheries, which is, we can say invisible in international the society. So we want to have people outside of Japan to know more about Japanese small-scale fisheries. And the second one that we're going to launch today, in here we have about 22 the translation authors and 14 the short communication essays contributors. So really these can be done without research community, without building a strong research network. So this is my first point. Another one is making research community oriented. And again, people on the spot, they really, the fishers, they sometimes really don't know what's going on. And in Japanese case, we had the recent policy change, which enables private capital to enter small-scale fisheries. So this has caused quite a great concern. And that's why we've been proposing this blue justice concept as well. And we really need to hear their voices, the community's voices, and life above water for the life below water, and the social science for the life above water. So this social science should be the one to listen to the communities, the voices. Yes. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Yinji. I mean, one of the responsibilities of research is to make the invisible visible. That's what you were saying. May it be through books like you are going to lunch today, or other kinds of initiatives. So those are novel approaches to how we can look at research and adjusting the research lens. So now moving on to Kumar for the same question.
Yes, thank you. What I will say, I will say from my experience in the last 10 years, after I retired from the Sisir University, I served as an advisor to the Department of Fisheries, to be a member of the National Fishery Policy Committee that chaired by the Prime Minister, as well as to be the technical working group on fishery for the Prime Minister office. From this experience, I found that policymakers of Thailand usually they based on biological approach. They stick to the MSY, TAC as the Western style, but that not fit to the country. However, after I served to this office for some years, I tried to convince them that in order to have a better policy for the small-scale fisheries, we need to understand the macro picture of the small-scale fishery as a whole, to learn what is the real issues of the small-scale fishery in the country, in each region or in each province in details. And therefore, the other thing that the government or the policymaker on fisheries should learn is IFA, the 7 pillars of IFA, because this will be as a frame to promote, it's a frame to make a policy, a fishery policy for the country. So far, I'm sure that they don't understand clearly on this. So that there should someone to interpret this one as a research, one of research strengths to understand what's the meaning of the 7 pillars clearly. And then the policy maker can set or establish the policy that can be pro small-scale fishery in the country. However, it's like hard to push the politician. Before I came to Bangkok, I talked with a politician. They asked me about how to develop the small-scale fisheries in the country. The first question he asked me that what is the number of the small-scale fishers? Because if the number of small-scale fishers is not big enough, they don't care. The number of waters is limited. So I think political will is the other reasons why we can get or cannot get the proper policy to pro the small-scale fisheries in the country. So all of the researchers from now on in Thailand, I think we should focus more on transdisciplinary approach in order to get a comprehensive information for the policy maker to have a proper policy for the small-scale fishery as a whole. I think that is what I want to express in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, and wonderful points about we still need after so many years of work, we still need a new framework for policies in countries like Thailand, but also many other countries. And a transdisciplinary approach, the proposal to include that in the policy domain is a really, really, really wonderful idea. How to do that is something that needs to be looked at. Okay, so now I'm going into the last 2 rounds. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a rapid round. So just 15 seconds. So tell me, in relation to your assigned topic, tell me one challenge and one opportunity associated with adjusting the research lens. Just the opportunity and the challenge. No need to explain it. And we'll keep some time for audience engagement and discussion. So we'll start with Gazi. In relation to your topic, one challenge, one opportunity.
Yeah, the opportunity is researchers might focus on the multiple dimension of poverty and food security to develop policies and programs for future sustainable well-being. Okay, so that's the opportunity. Threat and the challenges are theoretical and methodological challenge to explain and to capture the better understanding of multiple dimensions of poverty in the social-ecological context and factors that analytical tools, how to research investigation will be strengthened to understand the SSF problems and issues and making them a good, the inclusive and equitable livelihood in the way forward.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Sisir, one opportunity, one challenge.
One challenge is like having a robust framework in support of resource being a critical node in value chain. That requires a lot more research and inquiry and support. And the opportunity is that there is a greater appetite for sustainability and those dimensions that will actually help in building this kind of perspective.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Himli, just tell me the opportunity and the challenge. Just the words.
Thank you, Prateep. So the opportunity, the challenges would be to get the buy-in from the communities, for them to contribute to the research, so we can have a management plan development. And the challenges, the opportunity would be, the fisheries authorities in some country has opened their door and welcome any partners to contribute in research. So that's all for me.
Okay, great. Yinji?
Okay, challenge. The whole academia needs to adjust the research lens needs to be at the same page. And opportunity. We already have a big research network, TBTI, V2V, TBTI Japan, which will going to be even bigger and stronger. Thank you.
Okay, move on to Kumar.
The challenge is how to expand the transdisciplinary approach to the society or academic to the policymaker and to small-scale fishery as a whole. The opportunity is we have a strong TBTI in the country, especially we have Professor Ratana, so that is our opportunity. That's
strong leadership is there is no match with strong leadership in terms of opportunities. A wonderful point. Okay, so after the rapid round, I have a lightning round for you, which is just yes and no before we go on to the question and answer. And the lightning round is, of course, you have all passionately talked about your particular assigned topic. Now, are there other important lenses that needs to be considered? Yes or no? Gazi?
Yes, other lenses will need to be considered as well.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Sisir?
Yes, definitely, yes.
Okay. Himli?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yinji?
Yes, we have 5 more other lenses. Of the main topics of this Congress.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Say big yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Come on. Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we have a consensus. Okay. So wonderful. I know that we don't have a lot of time, but we still have 15 minutes time for engaging with discussion. So I would, with Suvaluck, I would like to open this up for our audience to ask questions, not only to the roundtable panelists, but also the 3 lead speakers that you heard in the beginning of this particular session. So the floor is open. I'm going to see the chat or question and answer. Okay. Oh, Tara has a question. So should I read it out? How do we do this? Okay, I can read this out and let's see who is asking. Thanks,
Prateep. Thanks, Prateep, and all the speaker that you have just finished. Now, I think maybe, is there any question or some point that you want to discuss in this group?
Yeah, there are questions already here. So I am going to read out a question. Is that the way we go? Because we only have 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So Tara Nayak is asking, okay, thank you for the rich and perceptive presentations. Listening to them, I would like to ask whether it is about adjusting the research lens or inventing newer and more effective kinds of research lens so that the images we want to capture are seen from a wider angle. Who wants to take it up?
This is a question about the metaphor of the lens. So I think Tara is asking, do we want to have better focus, or do we want to change our lens and make a wider angle? So, I mean, that's a kind of playful question in that sense, but maybe to take it seriously, I think that the panelists had a lot to say about adjusting the lens. So I think maybe the panelists should weigh in on this. It sounds like they've thought more about this metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Anyone who wants to take it up? It's a really good question, because we have been talking about adjusting the research lens. Let's not forget that adjusting is only one part of fixing things. There is probably too much of focus on adjusting might mean that we're losing out on really finding real novel other lenses, as Tara is alluding us to. Yes, Gazi.
Yeah, I think my understanding is we need to adjust. We cannot do the new things because we have some understanding already in the ground. So based on the understanding and belief, we try to see whether it exists or it requires a new understanding or not. So still we need to use the old lens to adjust the lens for looking at the new problems, new aspect.
Yeah, Derek, you have. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Sisir.
Yeah, I have only, this is an interesting question in that sense. I'm thinking of adjusting is one way to think about how do we incrementally look at the issues and bringing in perspectives that might are new challenges, new meanings. But the second thing is when we search for ideas and innovations, and automatically newer areas will emerge and new things will come as an emergence in the whole process. So this whole adjusting will give rise to emergence, and that would give to newer ways of looking at things, and newer research methodologies will definitely emerge in the space. And I think it's more of a continuous process to look at an issues and engage with issues from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the analogy or the metaphor is flawed, though, in one sense, because a lens presupposes that we're looking at something from a certain place, so that there's a risk that it is an objectifying kind of analogy. So I think we would need to wrestle with that as well, because there is a certain latent kind of positivism in the image itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If I could add something to that, I think, we all have been taking incremental steps towards doing something different, right? And the point about whether you need something drastically different or we could make incremental difference, I think that's important. And I think we're doing that in many ways to help us move forward. I think, we like to play with metaphor. We like, but it is true that there's a danger in communicating about it. So I think we could think a little bit more about the language that we use to communicate in order to really get the point straight. So I think one of the changes that we need, whether it's a new lens or adjusting the lens, it's about the research mentality. So people actually have to recognize, right, with the TD perspective, for instance, that we're not the only ones seeing the problem, not everyone seeing the problem in the same ways, and therefore there might be a need to really, think about different way of looking at the problems and also the solutions. And that would include perspective from the communities, for instance.
Yeah. And it also is very important, going back to what Kumar was reflecting on, the proposal to have a transdisciplinary approach to framing policies could be a brand new approach within the policy domain, but it is not probably in the academia for the researchers that have been doing and engaging in transdisciplinary. So something which might mean readjusting or adjusting in one particular domain might mean a brand new lens or approach in another domain. And the example from Kumar is something that supports this analysis. Okay. Other questions? I should not have the lightning round then, it should have been an easy round, so I save time for all of you to ask good questions. Okay, if I may just ask, one question. Okay, we were very top down, in assigning the topics that we assigned to each of the roundtable, participants. And of course, in one of the questions, I asked you, are other lenses important? And I gave you only the opportunity to say yes or no. If anyone wants to jump in and to say, what are those, other lenses? If you don't say something from the conference program book, that would be great, because those lenses are already defined. Are there other lenses that are not already included in the conference? And that needs to be looked at. Interesting. So I'm kind of making the lightning round a relaxed round now. So you have more time to reflect on your yes or no answers. Anyone from the roundtable?
I think the governance itself is a very big, wider window that bring in many lenses together. And the other one is, it's refreshing to see that finance lens is coming up. And within that finance, I think there are two important lens we need to, sub-lens I can say, we can to look at. One is emerging from the whole theoretical domain of capitalism and its whole influence in the systems and value chain marketing system. So in that sense, what I see in the context of value chain, so it is not only that whole discussion is within a particular thematic or motivational domain. It has to actually rise to few other aspects in terms of, we are talking of, for example, I'm talking of conservation ban. So that's generally communities in small scale fisheries lobbied for this kind of ban, monsoon ban for 2 months in Kerala, and that happened. But now this olive reed land, it's making 7 months ban. And when it becomes 7 months ban in a systems, and who loses and who gains in the whole process, those question comes. Then we probably need to look at conservation lens in terms of along with social well-being and along with capital, how does it influence the capital flow in the systems? So these are together, probably the transdisciplinary has an answer to this. However, we need to look at it very differently, these issues.
Yeah. I think, you raise a really important point. You're actually pushing us to think in terms of, more hybrid kind of lenses, not to look at these lenses as separate standalone lenses, but to kind of see what are the permutations and combinations that are possible in generating hybrid lenses, which could be more effective for complex, contexts, maybe something to think in the rest of the 2 days as part of the Congress. I see Nireka has a question. It looks like a question. What about the need for adjusting lenses, using new lenses, having new viewers of lenses and new subjects, participants, and the whole process being more discursive? Well, it would be very helpful if you could add a name to that. It makes my task easy, who to ask this. Anyone who wants to take this up? Derek?
Well, I mean, I think this is a question perhaps for Ratana, but this is about transdisciplinarity, I think, in a sense, because this is asking for, this is broadening the lens for more subjects to be included in the conversation. And those subjects also changing the very frames of the analysis as well. That's the discursive point. So it's again, I think, forgive me, Nireka, but it's maybe for dismantling the whole idea of the lens again. You bring in different bodies of knowledge, different participants, and the lens becomes something completely different. It becomes a song, it becomes a poem, it becomes a genealogy, and that's the lens that's missing. In fact, what I was thinking is that there's not a humanities lens in this list of lenses in the conference. We don't have a storytelling lens. We don't have a myths lens. We don't have a singing, songing, songs, dances, that kind of lens. I don't know. It's still bound within a kind of academic frame in that sense.
Yeah.
Right. It's a little bit tough to do that, in this kind of a hybrid setting. But indeed, we, what Nayak just said, we are creative. We're going to have a very interesting session tomorrow on our plenary. That will be one of those humanity inclusion. So Derek, you're running that one, by the way.
Yes.
Okay. But the point I want to make here is the following. I think it's great that we are all interested in adjusting lenses and doing different, approaching the research differently and doing it, engaging differently and communicating differently. But the challenge for all of us actually is how daring we want to be, because we never know where we're going to end up. We don't know exactly where we're going to go. We don't know where we're going to end up. Our research design could be, thrown out of the window. The more we started to engage and think about these new things that we need to add. And I think for the new researchers, for the early career researchers in particular, they are more, I think you might want to really think hard about that. All of us have these traditional, conventional career paths. You would probably have a bit more interesting career path than we do. So I think all these adjusting the lenses and stuff would need to eventually pan out into the reality of what you need to do. If you are interested in small scale fisheries research, what you end up doing, would you be doing what we are doing now, or you be doing something else? So there might be adjusting the career lens that will be needed.
Yeah.
Kumar told us how he adjusted his own career lens, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah. Somebody should be talking about breaking some of these lenses, to get to the new lenses, so it's not adjusting, break them, make them into pieces, then they will have, these are lenses have, reflection power, so they could reflect new realities and new ways of doing things. And some resolutions, some solutions, I don't believe in solutions, but anyway, some way out, from those broken, mirrors of the lens, projecting different ideas and images for future, I think on that note, maybe, we should bring it to an end, it is 11:30. Thank you very much. This was, wonderful, it's close to midnight here, but I'm enjoying, so this is wonderful. Thank you very much for all this, participants in this particular session. And if I may just hand it over to Suvaluck to bring it to an end. Over to you, Suvaluck.
So I think that we have to close for the session now. I think we get plenty of significant feedback for the research land. And I would like to thank Prateep and everyone in this session that were working hard to contribute the research land. And we hope that we can come up with adjusting the research land to help forward better for the small scale fisheries or in other disciplines as well. So thanks everyone, and we see you again at 1:30. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good work. Really. Bye.
Thank you, Suvaluck. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone again. Bye-bye.